She sat in the back row. Silent. Hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl pretending not to notice the predators circling the amphitheater. Every predator in the chamber tracked her first. The galactic conclave hall stretched wide, a cathedral of glass and bioluminescent metal, echoing with the hiss of alien respirators and the faint copper tang of recycled atmosphere. Representatives from 100 empires filled the seats, scaled tyrants with eyes like molten lead, chitinous warlords clicking their mandibles in agitation, soft-bodied telepaths whose bodies pulsed in anxious ultraviolet. Every one of them had studied the humans. Every one of them thought they knew the pattern. At the center podium, the High Executioner of the Vorati Dominion stood, his armored hide polished to a reflective sheen. Every step he took was a drumbeat of authority. Humanity, he rasped, voice amplified into a serrated echo that made spines shiver, will submit to protectorate status. Your fleets will disarm. Your colonies will pay tribute. Or your species will be corrected. Polite, measured applause rippled across the chamber. They expected outrage. A speech. Chest-thumping admirals in golden medals, screaming defiance, promising war. Instead, the humans sent a woman in a plain gray suit. Mid-50s. Silver threaded through dark hair. No visible weapons. No visible fear. She sat in the back row. And smiled faintly. Predators noticed. They always did. Vorati vision keyed to micro-expressions. The Kethari sensed pheromones. The insectoid thrall tasted cortisol in the air. She wasn't afraid. That unsettled them more than any warship. The executioner's slit pupils narrowed. Representative of Earth. Stand? She did. Slowly. No theatrics. No rush. My name is Mara Kincaid, she said, voice calm and warm, like a grandmother explaining taxes. And I'm here to decline your offer. Laughter erupted. Clicks, hisses, wet, echoing amusement. The executioner leaned forward. Decline? We've reviewed your proposal, Mara continued, her tone even. We find it inefficient. The laughter died. Inefficient. Not a word the Vorati Empire used lightly. They had conquered 12 star systems in a decade. They had cracked orbital fortresses, enslaved entire biospheres. Inefficient was a word that implied vulnerability. You misunderstand, the executioner growled. This is not negotiation. Oh, I understand perfectly, Mara said. You believe humans are prey. Soft. Divided. Old. You're half right. The chamber murmured, confused translation artifacts crackling through alien minds. You're now learning the other half. She tapped her wrist once. Somewhere beyond the hall, in orbit around Heliox Prime, a neutral capital world, a human freighter quietly adjusted its position. Vorati sensors detected nothing unusual. They were not looking for something so small. Back in the chamber, the executioner's frill flared. Your fleets are outnumbered 3-1. Your colonies are exposed. We've studied your wars. You bleed. You fracture. You argue. Mara nodded. We do. We argue about everything. Politics. Budgets. Barbecue recipes. A ripple of confused static passed through the hall. But when someone threatens our children, she said softly, we unify with breathtaking efficiency. The executioner's claws scraped the podium. Is that a threat? No, she replied. It's a warning. And then, in orbit above Heliox Prime, the Vorati's orbital shipyard vanished. Not exploded. Not incinerated. Vanished. One moment, a ring of docks and vessels shimmered against the horizon. The next, a sphere of silent, absolute black swallowed it whole. The chamber's holographic feed flickered to static. Panic rippled like a tidal wave. What have you done? Shrieked a Thrall ambassador, mandibles clacking. Mara did not raise her voice. We demonstrated a prototype, she said, as casually as if she were announcing tea time. Vorati fleets scrambled. Hundreds of sensors flared, trying to locate the vanished station. They found nothing. The executioner's voice dropped to a trembling hiss. You attacked neutral space. Mara met his gaze. No. We removed your staging ground. Silence fell heavy as a collapsing star. You declared your intentions weeks ago. She continued. We listened. We calculated response times. We traced supply routes. That shipyard serviced 70% of your forward fleet. Predators shifted uneasily. How? The executioner demanded. You looked at our fleet counts, Mara said. You looked at tonnage. You didn't look at civilian traffic. A new hologram flickered. Thousands of human-marked cargo vessels, mundane freighters, container haulers, mining barges. Each displayed faint, synchronized energy signatures. We weaponized logistics, Mara said. Every freighter carries a singularity seed. Every shipping lane is a potential battlefield. The Kethri envoy whispered, horrified. You turned commerce into a minefield. Mara's smile hardened. You turned our borders into targets. The executioner roared, claws slamming the podium. You have just united the galaxy against you. No, Mara said softly. You already did. We simply forced everyone to choose faster. As if on cue, Conclave representatives received urgent transmissions. Colonies along the Vorati frontier reported human aid shipments. Emergency defense grids activating. Pirate routes collapsing under mysterious gravitational anomalies. Human ships had been everywhere. Trading. Smiling. Waiting. The predators had tracked her first because instinct told them she was dangerous. They were right. The executioner's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You think this changes the outcome? We will crush Earth. We will glass your oceans. Mara's eyes darkened. You would have. Somewhere in orbit, human freighters drifted into optimal positions, invisible, patient, precise. The predators watched the silent woman in the back row. And for the first time in a generation, they felt hunted. The hour did not pass quietly. It bled across the frontier, across systems the Vorati thought secure. Battle groups surged forward in a show of defiance, massive war carriers igniting their engines like blades drawn in anger. They intended to prove that terror still belonged to them. They found instead empty space. Human frontier worlds had been evacuated days earlier. Cities powered down. Infrastructure stripped. Data cores wiped. All that remained were automated beacons broadcasting a single looping message. Thank you for visiting. Please enjoy your stay. Vorati commanders interpreted it as mockery. They ordered bombardment anyway. Planetary crust shattered. Oceans boiled. Continents cracked. They turned worlds into ash, and hid nothing of value. Because humanity had learned something over centuries of internal war, never tie your survival to geography. Back in the conclave hall, Mara Kincaid watched the live feeds with the detached focus of a battlefield surgeon. She tilted her head slightly, lips pursed, observing the panic ripple across alien faces. The colonies burn. The executioner growled, frill flaring. She nodded. Insurance claims are already processing. He blinked, unable to process her calm. She leaned slightly closer, her voice soft and deliberate. Did you really think we left civilians there? The Vorati fleet commanders began reporting something else. Tiny fluctuations along supply routes. At first dismissed as navigational noise. Then the first dreadnought vanished. Not in a blaze of laser fire. Not under bombardment. It simply folded inward, compressed into a point of impossible density, then disappeared. Human freighters, hundreds of them, had deployed singularity seeds. Small, synchronized pulses collapsing space along critical supply corridors. Vorati reinforcements were trapped in gravitational maelstrom before they could respond. Fuel depots imploded. Ammunition barges twisted into molten spirals. Logistics pipelines disintegrated. The Empire's power, which depended on certainty and control, dissolved into chaos. You've turned the galaxy into chaos, the executioner shrieked. No, Mara said. We turned your certainty into doubt. A Kethri general, scales pale with shock, interjected via hologram. Vorati forces are requesting assistance. They claim the humans are using civilian signatures as shields. Any intervention risks triggering more singularities. Mara's eyes swept the hall. You all signed trade accords with us. Our ships are in your systems. In your docks. On your routes. The implication sank like a hammer. You're holding the galaxy hostage, hissed the Threll envoy, mandibles clicking nervously. No, Mara corrected. We're demonstrating interdependence. She gestured toward the chaos unfolding across star maps. You built empires on fear. We build networks. A transmission flickered to life. A Vorati dreadnought had cornered what appeared to be a lone human mining vessel near Virex colony, the same colony where Mara's son had died. The Vorati captain transmitted boldly, voice amplified across interstellar channels. Human vessel, power down. Prepare for boarding and execution. Silence. Then a human voice crackled over the feed. Calm. Precise. Negative, lizard. I'm on schedule. The dreadnought fired. The mining vessel did not evade. It accelerated straight at the Vorati warship. The executioner leaned forward, triumphant. Foolish. Mara did not blink. At the last possible second, the cargo hold of the freighter split open. Hundreds of singularity seeds launched like a shotgun blast. Vorati point defense systems intercepted dozens, but not enough. Space screamed. A billion-ton warship imploded in segments. The bow, the midsection, the engine core, all collapsed inward, twisted by gravitational shear, leaving nothing but drifting debris. The conclave chamber fell silent. The human voice returned, breathless. For Virex. Mara closed her eyes briefly. Grief. Rage. Pride. She opened them, voice low and deadly. You see, you thought we'd respond symmetrically. Fleet versus fleet. Ship versus ship. The live feed showed the galaxy erupting in human ingenuity. Spaceways were littered with freighters carrying singularity seeds, improvised but precise, turning every shipping lane into a potential weapon. Every routine patrol became a strategic gamble. We responded culturally, Mara said. You responded predictably. The executioner's frill flattened against his skull. For the first time, he did not feel in control. You would annihilate billions to avenge one colony? He demanded. Mara's eyes were ice. You burned it for practice. Then came the revelation that would break the Vorati spirit entirely. Encrypted transmissions from the Vorati home system revealed human vessels, disguised as merchant caravans, had been orbiting the capital for months. Trading. Smiling. Observing. Waiting. They infiltrated our core? The executioner whispered. Mara's voice was calm, almost conversational. We attended your daughter's coronation. Diplomatic delegations. Cultural exchanges. You didn't notice because you only looked for threats you could fear. Predators tracked movement. Humans had sat still. They had waited. And now, from the shadows of civility, the galaxy's most terrifying weapons were in position. Singularities armed, fully synchronized, capable of crushing planetary defense grids in one pulse. Bloodless decapitation of empire. You have minutes, Mara said. Stand down your fleets. The executioner's claws trembled. The frill flattened. The Vorati Empire, renowned for fear, brutality, and control, was afraid. And all because a woman had sat in the back row. Silent. Watching. Calculating. For Mara Kincaid, humanity had learned a lesson no predator could ever unlearn. Never underestimate the species that waits quietly while everyone else assumes they are harmless. The galaxy burned in silence. Vorati dreadnoughts, still reeling from the first singularity detonations, staggered through empty space like wounded beasts. Commanders screamed orders that reached no one, fired weapons that dissolved into gravitational eddies, and tried to rally fleets that vanished before their eyes. They had thought they were predators. Now they were prey. Mara Kincaid remained in the back row of the conclave hall, hands folded, eyes on the flickering star charts. She was calm. Cold. Every line on her face told stories of loss, calculation, and an iron patience refined by centuries of human warfare. Your fleets are disintegrating. The executioner spat, claws scraping the podium. Your colonies are evacuating, your technology is being repurposed. Mara interrupted smoothly. Yes. You've noticed. Every system along the Vorati border was a maze of human ingenuity. Mining freighters became missiles. Civilian transport hubs were weapons factories. Evacuation routes doubled as ambush corridors. Humanity had weaponized everything predictable, turning every routine into a potential kill zone. A holographic feed revealed a Vorati battle group trapped between 3 human supply convoys. Each convoy appeared harmless. A bulk freighter here, a mining barge there, but every vessel carried microsingularity arrays, programmed to detonate in perfect synchronization. The first carrier approached cautiously. It triggered the first pulse. The carrier's bow twisted inward as if reality itself had decided it was no longer welcome. Seconds later, the next carrier disappeared entirely, imploding into nothingness. The remaining vessels tried to retreat. Their routes were pre-mapped, anticipated, and collapsed. They were ghosts before they realized they were being hunted. You can't possibly control this, the executioner growled, voice cracking. Mara smiled faintly. Control? No. We orchestrate consequences. The Kethari general leaned forward, scales paling. They're not just fighting. They're predicting us before we act. Every move you make is already countered. Mara's voice dropped, heavy and cold. We fight smarter because we've had to fight harder. And we never forget. You underestimated a species that survives civil wars by turning cities into weapons. That survives starvation by turning scarcity into strategy. That survives plague by turning desperation into resilience. The executioner's claws trembled. Your fleets, they're everywhere. Impossible. They are everywhere you allowed them to be, Mara said. We didn't invade. We integrated. The Vorati Emperor's personal fleet, the pride of the Dominion, had entered the contested zone. 500 million tons of death, armed to obliterate anything human in range. It fired first. The volley of plasma bolts lit the darkness with lethal intent. Human freighters scattered, but not to flee. They scattered to occupy optimal vector positions, each trajectory calculated to trigger secondary singularities once the enemy was enclosed. A massive explosion tore through the Vorati lead cruiser. The shields failed. The hull crumpled. The vessel fractured under the coordinated gravitational pull of a dozen micro-singularities. Seconds later, the fleet commander's flagship imploded, a black pinprick where a warship had been. Impossible! The executioner screamed. How can this be? Predictable, Mara interrupted. You think because we are few, because we look weak, that we cannot act. You track what moves, not what waits. You watch the surface, not the currents beneath. And the currents beneath were humans everywhere. They had been embedded in Vorati colonies, in trade networks, in courier fleets. Civilian freighters, disguised diplomats, maintenance ships, all silent, armed, coordinated. The galaxy itself had become a weapon. One by one, Vorati sectors reported friendly fire incidents. Entire command networks collapsed. Ships fired on one another after triggering singularity distortions. Communication arrays overloaded. Strategy, training, and experience meant nothing in the face of humans who used the universe itself as terrain. Mara leaned forward, voice lowering to a whisper that carried to the entire chamber. We do not attack the predator. We attack its assumptions, its certainties, its complacency. And when it stumbles, we finish it. The executioner's frill flattened completely. His empire, the most feared in known space, was unraveling before him, not by brute force, but by patience, intelligence, and a meticulous understanding of human grief and ingenuity. Suddenly, the conclave chamber's main feed exploded with a new transmission, a Vorati dreadnought approaching Heliox Prime, expecting a single unarmed human freighter. The freighter powered up, deploying a cluster of synchronized singularities. The dreadnought's shields flared, then failed. The vessel imploded silently, leaving a ripple of nothingness in its wake. The chamber gasped. The executioner's voice cracked. Your species, this is madness. Mara stood calm, resolute, and for the first time, her voice carried an edge honed by decades of watching humans survive the impossible. No, she said. This is evolution. We survive by turning every weakness into strength, every routine into a weapon, every loss into leverage. And now you will learn why you always hunted the wrong human first. Outside, across 1,000 light years, Vorati fleets scattered like frightened children. Humanity was not fighting them head-on. Humanity was everywhere, invisible, patient, precise, and merciless. The predators had tracked her first because instinct told them she was dangerous. They were right. And she was only getting started. By the time the Vorati realized the full scope of humanity's plan, it was already too late. Entire sectors had disappeared from their charts, swallowed by microsingularities detonated from freighters that looked harmless, cargo ships, passenger liners, even civilian mining platforms. The galaxy itself seemed to bend around humanity's will. Every predictable lane, every tactical advantage, every arrogance born of conquest had been turned against them. In the conclave hall, Mara Kincaid remained in the back row. Silent. Calm. Calculating. A predator among predators, yet more dangerous because she was human. The executioner slumped forward, claws trembling. You've destroyed our fleets, our colonies, our staging grounds, for what? Mara's eyes glimmered with a mixture of grief and steel. For what we were denied. For Virex. For every colony where your practice killed our children. For every human who ever learned the hard way that survival demanded ingenuity, patience, and ruthlessness. The chamber went still. Diplomats from every corner of the galaxy could feel it. The weight of a species that had been underestimated, ignored, and laughed at, now standing as a force no predator could ignore. Outside, the Vorati homeworld's orbital defenses began to flicker under the coordinated assault. Singularities targeted their planetary shields, compressing energy fields into collapse points. The Empire's pride, built on centuries of fear and intimidation, shattered silently, invisibly, without a single human soldier lost. You would flatten billions, the executioner hissed, frill quivering. To avenge one system? Mara's voice dropped to a whisper that carried through every channel. We don't avenge one system. We avenge the assumption that you could ever intimidate humanity. And then the final revelation came. Streams of transmissions from every human vessel embedded in Vorati space lit up simultaneously. Freighters, passenger liners, civilian transports, all armed, all positioned, all synchronized. The galaxy was a chessboard, and every square was lethal. One last pulse, precisely timed, would collapse the planetary defense grids of the Vorati capital world. Not to destroy the sun, not to erase life unnecessarily, but to remove the Empire's ability to threaten humanity again. A surgical decapitation. The executioner's voice dropped to a hiss, almost a sob. You've infiltrated our very home, without a single strike? Mara nodded slowly. Humans don't need to fight your way. We fight your assumptions. And when you fail to anticipate us, we win. Across the galaxy, Vorati fleets disintegrated into chaos. Command networks collapsed. Warships fired on each other as singularities warped the space between them. Colonies that had expected occupation instead found themselves empty and safe. Human ships, invisible until needed, had never left. They had been everywhere. Smiling. Watching. Waiting. A Kethri envoy, pale and shaking, whispered. They didn't just fight, they redefined warfare. Mara's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, thinking of her son. Then she hardened again. We did what had to be done. Not out of cruelty. Not out of vengeance, but because we could. And because no one else would do it for us. The executioner sank to his knees, defeated, humiliated, powerless. Humanity had not just survived, it had rewritten the rules of engagement for the galaxy. Mara rose and faced the chamber. Let this be a lesson to every predator who underestimates us. You will not catch us off guard. You will not intimidate us. You will not assume weakness where we sit quietly. Because when humanity decides to act, we are unstoppable. The predators who had tracked her first, the ones who thought they could predict her, felt it in their bones. Fear. A new, primal kind of fear. Not of weapons. Not of firepower. But of humanity itself, patient, relentless, and infinitely clever. In the back row, Mara Kincaid sat once more. Silent. Hands folded. Waiting. Watching. Calculating. The galaxy had learned, too late, that humanity was always in control, not by force, but by intellect, by patience, by an unflinching willingness to endure until the moment of perfect strike. And in that silence, that cold, terrifying calm, the predators finally understood, the human they tracked first had already won. Because humans did not need to roar. They only needed to wait. And when they acted, the galaxy trembled.